The Galactic King's voice thundered across the holoscreens, his jeweled mouth curling into a sneer that carried through every relay satellite and public broadcast dome in the Empire. He stood on his throne dais, surrounded by columns of molten gold that pulsed faintly with power, and the crown upon his head glowed like a captured star. "And so," he declared, talons raised for emphasis, "the human contagion is broken. Their twins are ash beneath my command. Their cries silenced, their blood spilled, their mother left hollow. This is what becomes of a race that dares to challenge the sovereignty of my dominion." Applause echoed through the audience chamber, a forest of alien hands clapping, tentacles slapping stone, mandibles rattling in a grotesque applause. From the high balconies, emissaries of 100 worlds nodded approvingly, trading sharp grins or whispered bets. Humans had been a nuisance, persistent, unpredictable, maddening in their refusal to fold. But at last, they had been humbled. 2 innocent children vaporized on a public scaffold, broadcast across 1,000 systems, as proof of alien supremacy. For the king, it was theater. For the galaxy, it was reassurance that the order of things remained intact. Among the crowd, a pair of Kivrians, scaled, lizard-like diplomats with opal eyes, whispered to one another in their own tongue. Strange, is it not, that the humans weep so loudly for so few? 2 hatchlings, hardly a loss. The other hissed back, that is their flaw. They feel too deeply. Sentiment shackles them. Yet as they spoke, an unease rippled under their scales. For even they recalled battles where humans fought with rocks, knives, or bare teeth when all technology had failed them. And somehow, too often they had won. The king spread his arms in mock benevolence, basking in his own performance. "Let it be known," he proclaimed, "that weakness will not be tolerated, that sentimentality is poison, that humanity, with its tears and lullabies, has no place in the order of strong races." He paused for dramatic weight, eyes narrowing as though daring anyone to contest him. None did. None ever did. Then the chamber doors groaned. It was not the trumpeted, ceremonial opening of court. It was slower, heavier, as though the hinges resented their task. The guards shifted uneasily, glancing at one another, unsure if the intrusion was planned. When the doors parted, a figure stood in the glow, small compared to the towering aliens, yet strangely commanding in the stillness that accompanied her. She was human. Her coat was black, tailored yet travel-worn, the hem brushed with dust from worlds uncounted. A faint veil of shadow clung to her pale face, though her eyes gleamed bright and alive, catching the light like polished steel. Her hair, tied loosely, fell in strands around her cheeks, damp from rain or perhaps sweat, as though she had crossed oceans to arrive. In her hand, she carried a porcelain cup of tea, steam rising, incongruous and absurd in the vastness of the alien throne room. And walking at her side were 2 creatures the galaxy had only glimpsed in whispers, a scarred, battle-trained earth dog, whose muscles rippled beneath its fur, and a stocky, snarling honey badger, whose claws scraped the stone floor with nails sharp as razors. The crowd murmured, confusion sparking like static. "A human," someone gasped. "Impossible. The humans dare not show themselves here." A moniker noble covered his mandibles, hissing, "She is mad to enter this chamber." Yet no guard moved forward. Their hands hovered above weapons, but something about her stillness made them hesitate, as though she carried an invisible command of her own. The woman smiled faintly, and her voice rang out clear though unhurried, every syllable polite, as if she were greeting neighbors across a white picket fence. "Lovely speech," she said, sipping from her tea. "Truly, a performance worthy of history. I especially liked the part where you gloated about killing children. Very dignified, very kingly." The sarcasm slid past most of the aliens, who exchanged puzzled looks, unsure if she had insulted him or praised him. But the king, perceptive enough in cruelty, stiffened. "Who dares?" His talons clutched the armrests of his throne. "Name yourself human, before I extinguish you where you stand." She inclined her head, the smile never faltering. "They call me many things," she said softly. "A shadow, a ghost, an assassin. But on Earth, where names still mean something, mothers whisper me as the Baba Yaga." The words echoed like a curse, and though few aliens grasped its meaning, they felt its weight. It was not a name, it was a warning. The dog growled low, eyes locked on the throne. The honey badger snorted, fearless, its stubby body bristling with defiance. A ripple of laughter went through one section of the chamber, nervous, mocking. She brought pets, sneered a reptilian envoy. Does she think animals will topple an empire? The woman glanced toward him, her gaze mild, almost amused. Funny thing about animals, she said lightly. They bite without asking permission. Unlike most of you. A ripple of confusion swept the audience. Her words sounded friendly, conversational, but they carried sting, as though each syllable cut through armor none had noticed they wore. The king leaned forward, nostrils flaring. You are a fool to come here, he hissed. Your species is broken. I shattered your womb. Your children are ash. The teacup clinked as she set it on the nearest marble edge. Her smile did not change, but her eyes darkened, shadows swallowing the glint of steel. She exhaled slowly, as though restraining an ocean's worth of grief beneath the thinnest layer of composure. Yes, she whispered. You did kill my twins. You thought it was theater. But where I come from, king, theater has consequences. Every show ends with a reckoning. The audience fidgeted, the murmurs growing louder. A few of the wiser alien elders shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the tremor in her voice. It was not the broken wail of a grieving mother. It was something colder, quieter, something far more dangerous. She is too calm, one muttered under his breath. This is not grief. This is calculation. The king laughed suddenly, forcing the room back under his command. You are one woman with a beast and a vermin. I command fleets, armies, planets. What debt could you possibly collect here, in my throne? The dog barked once, sharp as gunfire. The honey badger hissed, lowering itself like a coiled spring. But the woman merely folded her hands, almost demure, her posture casual, her words slipping out like honey laced with arsenic. I didn't come for your fleets, she said. I came for your crown. And perhaps, if I'm in the mood, your smile. Silence struck the chamber like a blade through silk. The alien stared, unsure whether to laugh or shrink back. The king sneered, feigning amusement. You cannot touch me, child. Do you think your threats frighten me? Oh no, she said sweetly. I wouldn't dream of frightening you. She leaned a fraction closer, her voice dropping until the microphones strained to carry it. Fear is too soft. I came to collect a debt. And the debt is not yours alone, king. It's owed by every creature here who applauded your cruelty. She swept her gaze across the chamber, and suddenly, aliens who had moments ago clapped and jeered found themselves avoiding her eyes, shifting nervously in their seats. One diplomat tugged at his collar as though the air had grown hotter. Another hid behind his companion, suddenly uncertain of his own applause. Her dog padded forward 2 steps, claws striking stone. The honey badger followed, growl low and guttural. The king's guards braced, but none advanced. Something in their instincts screamed that to draw first blood against her would be folly. The king forced another laugh, brittle this time. You are a curiosity, human. But soon your name will be forgotten. I will scatter your ashes with those of your children. Her eyes gleamed, and for the first time her smile widened. Thin, dangerous, unflinching. Then I suppose, she said, her voice a velvet blade, I will have to make certain you remember me first. The holoscreens across the galaxy captured her face at that moment, the serene, polite woman with eyes of steel, standing beside her furious animals, tea still steaming on the ledge. Billions of alien viewers leaned closer to their screens, unease prickling along their spines, though most could not explain why. Something ancient stirred in the back of their minds, something primal that whispered, predator. The king's laughter faltered, his talons tightening until the armrests cracked beneath them. He opened his mouth to summon the guards, to declare her death, to reclaim control of the chamber. But before he could speak, she tilted her head, voice soft as a lullaby. I came to collect a debt, she repeated. Then, as the silence deepened and the chamber held its breath, she added with chilling calm, and I never leave unpaid accounts. The chamber settled into an uneasy hush, the echoes of her last words lingering in the gilded air, like smoke refusing to dissipate. The king adjusted himself on his throne, talons scraping at the armrests he had already cracked, his eyes burning with a mixture of fury and a strange, reluctant caution. Around him, the alien assembly leaned forward, not in mockery this time, but with the kind of wary fascination one grants to a predator stepping into unfamiliar territory. The woman remained calm. She clasped her hands before her, as if she were simply a guest who had been invited to tea. Her dog lay down with the discipline of a soldier awaiting command, chest rising and falling in slow, steady rhythm. The honey badger, by contrast, sat upright on its haunches, eyes gleaming with wild impatience, every muscle twitching as if daring the universe to test it. The contrast was comical and terrifying all at once, and Baba Yaga let the tension linger. When she spoke again, her tone was warm, conversational, so at odds with the charged silence that it unnerved those listening more than a scream would have. "You know," she began, "on Earth we have a game. Baseball. It's a silly thing at first glance. One person throws, another swings, and everyone else waits. But it isn't about brute force. It's about patience, watching, waiting, knowing exactly when to strike. A man can stand there for hours, looking harmless, only to shatter the world with one swing." She smiled politely, and a ripple of unease ran through the crowd. The king tilted his head, confused, but several of the elder envoys frowned, catching the edges of the metaphor like distant thunder. The lizard-skinned Kibrian envoy chuckled, trying to dispel his nerves. "You humans are fond of odd stories, as if games and toys could equal fleets." Baba Yaga glanced his way, her expression as sweet as honey. "Funny," she replied. "That's what the last empire said. The one that tried to starve us into surrender by burning our crops. They didn't expect we'd learn to eat grass and bark until they starved instead." Her tone was gentle, almost apologetic, but the envoy swallowed, his scales shifting in discomfort. The king slammed a fist onto the dais. "Enough of this drivel. You dare compare children's games to war? You stand in my hall, woman, and tell stories while your species rots." She inclined her head as though acknowledging a point in a debate, her smile never faltering. "Stories are how we survive, Your Majesty. We weave warnings inside them, so even our children know the cost of forgetting." She leaned forward, lowering her voice to something soft and intimate, forcing the microphones to amplify every syllable. "Would you like to hear one? It's about a farmer who caught a wolf in his sheepfold. Rather than kill it, he tied it up, mocked it, even cut away its teeth. He paraded it through the village, laughing. But wolves don't forget. Even a broken one waits. And one night, while the farmer slept, the wolf remembered where its jaws belonged. The dog lifted its head, lips pulling back to reveal gleaming teeth. The honey badger's claws scraped the stone floor with a sound that made nearby envoys flinch. The king bared his own sharp teeth in response, but for the first time his laughter rang hollow. She stepped further into the chamber, her boots clicking softly on the polished floor, every movement deliberate. "You see, my king, what you've done isn't clever. It isn't wise. It's theater, yes. But poor theater. Killing children is like boasting that you can crush an egg beneath a hammer. No one doubts you can. The real question is what happens when the hen comes back to peck at your eyes." Nervous laughter broke out among the younger envoys, but it was laughter edged with fear, not amusement. One insectoid diplomat muttered, "She speaks in riddles." His companion whispered back, "No, she speaks in knives." The king spread his arms, feigning indulgence. "And what knife do you carry, Baba Yaga? What weapon do you wield, that I should tremble? You are one woman, two beasts, and a cup of tea." Her eyes glinted, and she picked up the porcelain cup again, raising it in a small toast before sipping calmly. "Do you know poker?" she asked, tone casual. "Another of our games. It's not about the card you hold. It's about convincing everyone else that your cards are worth more than theirs. Sometimes you bluff with nothing. Sometimes you win with everything. Either way, the one who keeps smiling longest walks away with the pot." She set the cup down. The dog barked once, startling half the assembly. The honey badger hissed, lunging briefly before sitting back, satisfied by the chaos it caused. The woman chuckled softly, almost maternal. "You see, Your Majesty, we humans don't frighten you by roaring. We frighten you by smiling. Because when we smile, you don't know whether we're bluffing or about to set the table on fire." The chamber grew thick with tension. Aliens shifted uncomfortably, caught between curiosity and dread. A three-eyed scholar murmured, "They mask violence in politeness. I see it now. They dress threats in silk." Another whispered, "It's camouflage. Like predators who purr before they bite." The king stood abruptly, his crown casting prisms of light across the chamber. "Enough. Guards." His order faltered as none of the guards moved. They stood frozen, not out of loyalty to the woman, but because instinct screamed at them to stay put. To advance would be to step into the teeth of something they did not yet understand. Baba Yaga's smile softened, and for a heartbeat, grief flickered through her calm. "You want to know the weapon I carry?" she said, her voice hushed, tender as if speaking of a memory. "It was two small hands. They used to clutch mine as we crossed streets, laugh when my dog chased them, squeal when the badger stole their food. That was my weapon. You took it from me. And now you will see what fills the space when love is torn out by the root." Her words struck harder than a plasma blast. Several envoys lowered their eyes, unable to meet her gaze. The king sneered, but his talons dug deeper into the throne's arms. The woman straightened, the faintest crack in her composure sealed once more. "On Earth, when someone dies, we gather for a wake. Do you know what that is?" she asked softly. The king scoffed. "A human sleep ritual?" Her eyes hardened, and the smile she gave then was the kind that emptied stomachs and chilled blood. "No," she said. "It's when the family drinks, remembers, and swears vengeance. It's when the dead teach the living how to fight." And King, she leaned in closer, her voice so low the microphones almost failed. "You've just been invited." The audience gasped, the sound like a storm breaking. Whispers spread like wildfire. Translators struggling to keep up, voices overlapping in fear and awe. Some aliens shrank back in their seats. Others scribbled frantic notes, already calculating whether aligning with humanity might be safer than opposing it. The dog rose, hackles raised, muscles taut with controlled violence. The honey badger scuttled forward a few steps, its low growl vibrating through the marble floor. The guards tightened their grips on weapons, but still did not advance. Something in the air told them the first strike would not belong to them. The king's voice wavered for the first time, though he masked it quickly with a roar. "You dare threaten me in my own throne room? You speak of wakes and wolves and games as if words could cut steel." The woman tilted her head, her tone turning almost playful, a cruel echo of innocence. "Words are sharper than steel, Your Majesty. Steel dulls. Word spread. Ask yourself this. Why does every child across the galaxy know the tale of the boogeyman, when none have ever seen him? Because a story, once seated, grows teeth sharper than any blade." The chamber erupted in nervous murmurs. Several envoys exchanged looks of dread recognition. One reptilian scholar whispered, "Boogeyman? What is this word?" His companion answered, trembling, "It is what humans call the shadow that waits under the bed." The king tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. "You cannot frighten me with bedtime tales." Her expression shifted, grief melting into something colder, something infinitely more patient. "Bedtime tales," she repeated softly. "Yes, that's where it starts. But tell me, King." She let the words linger like poison in the air, her eyes glinting with a predator's promise. "When the boogeyman finally steps out of the dark, do you think anyone is laughing?" The silence broke like glass beneath the weight of a single growl. The dog, its scarred muzzle low, teeth bared, advanced 3 paces before halting, its eyes locked on the throne as if it had always known this was the target. The honey badger followed, claws scraping like a blade dragged over stone, a guttural hiss bubbling in its chest. The alien audience recoiled instinctively, chairs scraping, mandibles clicking in alarm, wings rustling in nervous beats. They had applauded the death of children minutes earlier, but now, faced with 2 earth beasts and their keeper, They could not explain the sudden chill along their spines. Baba Yaga's posture did not change. She stood at ease, hands clasped lightly as though hosting a dinner party, her gaze sweeping across the chamber with deliberate calm. Her voice was softer than before, almost tender, but amplified across the room, it carried the weight of thunder. The boogeyman walks not on shadows alone. He walks on memory, on grief sharpened into resolve. He walks when the living can no longer endure silence. And tonight, she gestured faintly, and the dog's growl deepened until it became a sound older than words. Tonight he walks with me. The king rose in fury, his voice cracking like whips against the chamber walls. Seize her, he roared. Tear out her tongue. Break her beasts. But the guards hesitated again, their instincts snarled by the uncanny weight of her presence. One finally forced himself forward, a towering reptilian soldier with scales like burnished steel. He swung a plasma pike toward the woman, its blade humming. In the same breath, the dog launched, jaws closing around the weapon shaft with a snap of bone-breaking force. The guard staggered, stunned by the impossible strength, before the honey badger barreled into his legs, claws raking through armor as though it were fabric. The soldier screamed as he toppled. The honey badger clamped onto his throat in a frenzy of snarls. Gasps filled the chamber. Several envoys leapt to their feet, horror plastered on faces that minutes earlier had sneered. One insectoid emissary clutched his companion's arm. It bleeds through armor, he stammered. That thing bleeds through armor. The king snarled, but another wave of guards surged forward, forced by honor and command to obey. Baba Yaga did not move at first, merely watching as the storm came for her. Then, with a breath like a prayer, she reached into her coat and drew a blade. Nothing glowing, nothing advanced, just a simple steel knife honed to a razor's edge. To aliens, it seemed primitive, absurd. To her, it was sacred. She moved with precision, every strike efficient, never wasted. A guard swung wide. She ducked, carved open his tendon, and stepped past him before his scream reached air. Another thrust his weapon. She sidestepped, pressed the blade through the seam of his neck plating, and whispered almost kindly, "Sleep." He collapsed, gurgling. The dog tore through a third, shaking him like prey. The honey badger, unstoppable, launched itself at a soldier 3 times its size, clawing, biting, refusing to yield even as plasma scorched its hide. The chamber became chaos, and across the galaxy, holoscreens broadcast every second. Billions watched with wide, horrified eyes. What they saw was not battle, it was dissection. The woman fought as though she had lived this moment in her dreams 1,000 times, every step rehearsed in grief, every strike measured in vengeance. And yet she was smiling, always smiling. The alien assembly devolved into panic. Some scrambled for exits, trampling one another in desperation. Others remained frozen, riveted by the impossible tableau. A human woman and 2 earth beasts dismantling the king's honor guard as if swatting flies. A scholar whispered hoarsely, She is not fighting for victory. She is fighting for memory." His companion whimpered, "No, she is fighting to teach us fear." The king bellowed, his crown rattling as his fury boiled. "This is nothing. She is one. I command legions." But his voice trembled, and the cracks showed in the iron facade. He saw what the envoy saw. Soldiers trained for decades crumbling before one woman with a knife and 2 animals born of Earth's relentless cruelty. Baba Yaga twisted the knife free from another fallen guard, flicking blood from the blade with an almost delicate gesture. Her eyes lifted to the throne, calm and unhurried. "Funny thing about legions," she said conversationally. "They're made of individuals, and individuals bleed." The dog returned to her side, muzzle red, chest heaving. The honey badger shook itself, gore dripping from its claws, its body trembling not with exhaustion but eagerness, as though daring the universe to send more. She laid a gentle hand on its back, soothing it with a soft murmur, before turning her gaze back to the king. "You told the galaxy humans were weak," she said, her voice steady, broadcast now to billions watching. "You paraded my twins as proof. But weakness, Majesty, is not measured in how loudly we cry. It is measured in how long we stand back up after you've tried to bury us." And tell me, she spread her arms, blood dripping from her blade onto the polished floor. Does this look like surrender? The response was silence. Utter, deafening silence. Even the envoys who moments earlier had cheered found no words, their mandibles slack, their scales pale, their wings drooping. Somewhere in the gallery, a child belonging to one of the noble species whimpered, and its mother hushed it quickly, terrified that the human might notice. The king's eyes darted across the room, searching for support, for laughter, for anything to restore his theater. But none met his gaze. They were all watching her. She began to walk forward, slow, deliberate steps echoing like war drums across the chamber. Each pace pressed the weight of inevitability into the king's chest until he felt it was harder to breathe. She did not rush, because she had no need. The distance between them was not merely physical. It was the gulf between predator and prey, and every heartbeat made him understand which he was. "You wanted theater," she said, her tone dropping to a whisper that filled every corner. "Here it is." The curtain rises. The boogeyman walks. At her signal, the dog barked once, the sound reverberating like gunfire. The honey badger let out a shriek that curdled blood. The guards who remained did not advance. Instead, they fell back, the instinct of survival overwhelming the commands of duty. The audience had ceased to be witnesses. They were now captives of the story unraveling before them, helpless to look away. Baba Yaga stopped halfway up the dais steps, tilting her head as if studying the king. "Do you hear it?" she asked softly. The king's throat tightened. "Hear what?" he demanded, though his voice cracked. She smiled, and her eyes gleamed like blades catching light. "The silence. Listen closely. It's the sound of every world watching you realize you are no longer feared. It's the sound of your throne cracking, one heartbeat at a time." The holoscreens carried her words across the galaxy. In mining colonies and capital worlds, in outposts and royal courts, billions leaned forward to hear the whisper. Children shivered, warriors clenched their fists, rulers felt sweat bead beneath their robes. The boogeyman was not a myth anymore. It had a face. It had a voice. And it was smiling. The king staggered a step backward on his dais. For all his gold and jewels, for all his fleets and armies, he looked suddenly smaller than the woman before him. He raised a trembling hand, pointing at her as though the gesture alone could kill. You cannot, one human cannot." Her smile widened, soft as a mother's lullaby, sharp as a guillotine's edge. "One is all it takes, Majesty," she whispered. And with that, she raised her blade, pressing its bloodied edge lightly against her palm until a single drop of her own blood slid down, bright and red against the steel. She held it aloft for all to see, letting the galaxy itself witness her offering. "This," she said, her voice steady, resonant, unshakable, "is the covenant of grief. You thought killing my twins ended a story. It only began one. And now every empire, every throne, every crown will learn what wakes when you shatter a mother's heart." The chamber quaked with silence, the king trembling in his seat. The galaxy held its breath. The boogeyman had stepped out of the dark. And as the last echo faded, Baba Yaga whispered one more phrase, soft as death itself. "I am not alone." The king's crown trembled on his head as the silence stretched, long and unbearable. Every envoy, every guard, every watching citizen across the galaxy leaned into that pause, caught between disbelief and the undeniable truth unfolding before them. The human woman did not waver. She stood at the foot of his dais, her beasts bristling at her side, her blade dripping with blood not her own, and she smiled with the patience of eternity. The king tried to laugh again, to reclaim control, but it cracked in his throat, thin and brittle. "You think this theater will change anything? You stand alone, human. One assassin cannot unmake an empire." Her eyes softened, almost pitying, though her lips curved with something sharper. "Alone," she murmured, tilting her head. "You still don't understand. You've mistaken me for the play. I'm just the opening act." At that moment, the holoscreens flickered. What had been a broadcast of the throne room expanded, split into dozens, then hundreds of feeds. One by one, Images filled the sky above the chamber and every viewing screen across the empire. Human warships slipping from shadow, crawling out of void space like predators awakening from sleep. Black silhouettes blotted out stars, vast vessels bristling with guns, engines burning with cold fury. They were not parades of glory like the king's fleets. They were practical, brutal, efficient, the kind of ships designed not to impress, but to end wars. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Envoys stood, craning necks toward the holoscreens. Some shouted in their own tongues, frantic and terrified. Others sank into their seats, color draining from their faces. Across the galaxy, citizens froze, watching the human armada reveal itself after years of silence, patience, planning. Baba Yaga's smile widened by a fraction. "We let you laugh at us," she said gently. "We let you call us weak, sentimental, broken. We buried our grief where you couldn't see. While you played at empire, we played at patience. And now," she gestured faintly upward, as if conducting an orchestra, "now the curtain rises on extinction." The king staggered back, shaking his head, words tumbling out in fury. "Impossible. You had no fleets left. We destroyed your navy, burned your colonies, left you with nothing but soil and tears." Her eyes flicked toward him, glinting with quiet fire. "Soil and tears are enough. From soil we grew new steel. From tears we forged resolve. You thought starvation would break us. It only taught us to make feasts of famine." The honey badger hissed, pacing the dais steps like a shadow given form. The dog growled, ears forward, gaze fixed on the king as though awaiting permission. The king's guards edged back, unsure whether to protect their master or flee while they still could. One envoy, a feathered dignitary whose species had once dismissed humans as featherless chicks, rose trembling. This is madness. Humanity was broken. They should not," his words faltered, and he sat heavily, clutching his head. Baba Yaga turned toward him, voice soothing, almost motherly. "You're right. By your logic, we should not be here. We should not be smiling. We should not be standing. But we are. And that's the thing you never understood about humans. We are the animal that keeps walking when logic says we should fall." The holoscreens shifted again, this time showing planets. Outposts of the empire, now under blockade. Human banners unfurling over garrisons. Alien soldiers surrendering with hands raised. Entire colonies watching in disbelief as the predators they once mocked revealed their teeth. The message was not subtle. It was not meant to be. It was the unveiling of a trap laid so patiently, so quietly, that not even the king's spies had seen it. His voice broke into a roar, desperate now. "You would destroy everything? You would plunge us into chaos for vengeance." Her expression cooled, grief shining through like light behind glass. "You destroyed everything the moment you took my twins from me. Chaos was your gift. I'm only returning it wrapped in steel." The king lunged forward, pointing a talon at her, as if to skewer her with gesture alone. "You think yourself merciful? You think this terror will make you rulers?" She stepped onto the dais at last, ascending the steps one by one, her presence towering though she was small among giants. "Merciful," she echoed. "No. Humans are not merciful when mercy is wasted. But nor are we monsters. We are something you cannot categorize. That is why you fear us." She paused, standing a breath away, her knife steady at her side, her smile calm. "We do not rule with fear. We remind the galaxy why fear exists in the first place." The dog stood at her heel, silent and watchful, a sentinel of loyalty. The honey badger clambered onto the dais, snarling at the king's knees as though daring him to move. The envoys shifted, some trembling, some already bowing their heads as though acknowledging a new order. Baba Yaga reached the final step, face level with the king's. His crown gleamed in the cold light, but sweat rolled down his brow, his breath ragged. She spoke softly, her tone intimate, as though sharing a secret. "I don't want your throne. Thrones rot the soul. What I want is for every world that laughed at my children's deaths to remember this night forever. That when humanity smiles, it means the blade is already at your throat." Her words carried across the galaxy, burning into history. Children huddled by screens would grow up whispering them in the dark. Warriors would etch them onto blades. Rulers would hear them in their sleep, waking with sweat-soaked robes. The king tried to summon defiance, raising his chin though his voice shook. You can kill me, but others will rise. The galaxy will unite against you. Her smile turned colder, though her eyes shone with something almost tender, pity for a dying man. You still don't understand. You think you are the center, but you're only the first domino. The galaxy won't unite against us. It will fracture, tremble, surrender in pieces. And by the time they realize the boogeyman walks among them, she raised her blade slowly, deliberately, until it hovered just under his chin. It will be too late. Gasps erupted. The holoscreens zoomed closer, broadcasting the moment in stark clarity. Billions held their breath. The king, ruler of empires, master of fleets, stood trembling before one human woman and her beasts. She did not strike immediately. Instead, she lowered the blade fractionally, her voice slipping into a tone so soft it was almost kind. You will live long enough to announce it yourself. The galaxy must hear the words from your own mouth, that the humans you mocked now hold your crown. The king's lips trembled, fury and despair warring in his eyes. But when he looked around, at guards who dared not move, at envoys who already bent their heads, he knew. Slowly, choking on shame, he spoke into the microphones. I surrender. The chamber erupted. Not in applause, not in jeers, but in stunned silence, broken only by the echo of his words carried across the stars. Across colonies and capitals, across stations and ships, the phrase spread like wildfire. The Galactic King had surrendered to a human mother with a knife. Baba Yaga leaned closer, whispering so softly the microphones nearly missed it. Thank you. That will be your final performance. And with one swift, merciful motion, she ended him. The crown rolled across the dais, clattering like thunder. The honey badger leapt onto the throne, ripping down the empire's banners with savage delight. The dog stood guard beside its mistress, eyes steady, ears forward, as if understanding the history now written. The galaxy watched, transfixed. What they saw was not chaos. It was inevitability. The boogeyman had stepped out of the dark, and he smiled with a human face. Baba Yaga turned toward the holoscreens, her gaze piercing through cameras into billions of watching eyes. She raised the blade still wet with blood, her voice calm, precise, unwavering. We are not the monsters you feared. We are worse. We are patient. We are grieving. We are smiling predators. And you gave us reason. Her words ended, but the silence that followed was louder than any roar. The empire had fallen. The galaxy had shifted. And the story of humanity had only just begun.